Hello, and welcome to the first video in this series about how to make better things faster with steel threads. If you ever tackle creative projects, and most of us do, then you're probably like me and everyone I've ever worked with in that you sometimes get stuck. You procrastinate, you can't get traction, you stall on a project halfway through. One of my favorite techniques for making things faster and getting better results without getting stuck quite as much is the steel thread approach. I first learned about this years ago as a software engineer and product manager in the tech industry. And since then, steel threads have helped me and my clients engage with creative work. Novels, blog posts, workshops, product development for startups, building a business, even junk journaling. Steel threads help with all kinds of creative work. So in future videos, we'll break down the steel thread approach, why it's useful, how to make a steel thread, a bunch of specific tips and tricks. But for right now, let's answer the most obvious question. What the heck is a steel thread? An individual steel thread is the tiniest possible end-to-end version of the entire project that you want to make. We call it a thread because it weaves end-to-end across the span of your project. And we call it steel because it's strong enough to be the foundation for later improvements. The definition that I've got here is adapted from a blog post by a great engineering leader and coach I used to work with named Jade Rubick. I've included a link to his post in the description below. As an engineer and product manager, I used steel threads as an iterative approach to help my teams tackle new and challenging projects where we needed to get traction quickly, but we didn't know enough to be able to plan out the whole project. And frankly, that's the situation for most creative work. You have an idea of what you want to build, but you're charting your own course as you go. Steel threads help us navigate the complexity and uncertainty of creating something new. Let's look at some other approaches so we can see where the steel thread approach really shines. At the beginning of a software project, I would often do what's called a fat marker prototype. The idea here is you sketch out a very high-level design of the thing that you want to make, and you use a nice fat marker so that you can't get lost in the details. You have to just draw the broad strokes. A fat marker prototype is over here at the low end of the complexity scale. It is a great way to think through a project in the early stages, but by itself, it doesn't really tell you how to make the thing. Now, even outside of the tech industry, a lot of people have heard of the MVP, or minimum viable product. The idea with an MVP is you figure out the minimum version of your project that will actually succeed in the world, that will be viable. And you build the smallest viable version to start. Now, I'm a huge fan of the MVP concept. In fact, I use the MVP constantly in combination with steel threads. But on its own, the minimum viable product concept has some traps. I'm going to focus on a few things that often trip us up, and they are all hiding in this little word, viable. The first trap is that at the beginning of a new project, we are just guessing at what viable is. We don't actually know. Which features are users going to find essential? How many drafts of that novel do we need to write? What version of our video is going to land with viewers? On day one, we are just guessing. And when we're aiming at viable, something that's good enough to launch, something that's good enough to sell or publish, it's very easy to trick ourselves out of doing the minimum. That's just good old fear. I see it in myself and in my clients every single day. We're afraid it's not going to be good enough. We're afraid it's going to fail. And we often end up doing more than we need to do. Of course, other times, viable is actually bigger than we thought, and we don't discover that until deep into the project. And if we'd known earlier, we might have made some different decisions. So the fat marker prototype is a great way to get started, and the MVP helps us think about when we're finished, but how do we do all the messy work in the middle? Enter the steel thread. It has more complexity than a fat marker prototype. With a steel thread, you're building something real and you're touching all the major steps of the project. but steel threads have less complexity than an MVP. Each steel thread is a tiny iteration that doesn't need to be viable. It doesn't need to succeed. It just needs to teach you what you need to learn so you can make the next steel thread. We'll get into some detailed examples in later videos, but I don't want this to stay abstract, so let's touch on a few concrete examples really quickly. Let's say you're creating a new workshop. You could jot down the main points that you want to cover, create some very basic slides, and walk through that with a friend. That could be a steel thread. Or maybe you're writing a book, let's say a novel. You could work out the rough storyline and write a one-page narrative outline that tells the story in a single page. That could be a steel thread. Maybe you're tackling a new workout routine and it's a bit daunting. You could start by just doing one of each exercise. That could be a steel thread for a new workout. This YouTube video you're watching now is actually a great example of this approach in action. I made several steel threads in the process of making this video. The first one had an early version of these slides, a very rough talk track, and I recorded, I think, 3 takes of the video itself. I edited the take that I hated the least, uploaded it to YouTube as a private video, and it was very rough. I shared that painfully rough first video with 4 people, which was not easy because I knew it wasn't great. But getting early feedback meant I could go back and make much smarter improvements. Okay, now you know at a very high level what steel threads are. In the next 2 videos, we'll get into why you might use this approach and then how to make your first steel thread. But before I wrap up today, here is an exercise. Think about a project that you are working on or something you've been wanting to tackle. What is the smallest complete version of this project that you could finish in 1 week? Write down a list of 4 or 5 essential steps, set it aside, and I will see you for the next video about why steel threads are so effective. This summer, I am offering a free masterclass on how to make better things faster with steel threads. Now, the only way to really learn a practical method like this is by doing. That's why I'm not doing a webinar. What I'm offering is a free interactive masterclass. You'll be in a Zoom call with me where you can turn on your mic and camera and get live coaching. We'll dig into where you're getting stuck and how to design steel threads for your specific challenges. Whether you're an artist, writer, teacher, coach, software engineer, product manager, a maker of any kind, this masterclass will help you get unstuck and bring your vision to life. I'm keeping class sizes small, so if this sounds exciting, sign up for a spot. Don't worry, the link is in the description below. And of course, if what I'm talking about here resonates with you, please hit subscribe and the notification bell to catch the next video in this series. That is it for today. I hope to see you in the masterclass.